Hi folks, I'm Matt and welcome to beautiful Columbus, Ohio. You see that over there? That's Tiffany's & Company. The missus could spend about what I paid for at our house and still not be satisfied. I'm not going in there. But we didn't come here for any of that. We came here to talk about Star Wars Expanded Universe and talk about the EU we shall. Continuing on with the comics, you need to go to Star Wars Republic number 63. Now this one's written by John Ostrander, and this one has to deal again with Quinlan Vos still undercover. Now John Ostrander played it a little slick here because we had gotten so caught up in what all the story was going on, we had completely forgotten about Quinlan Vos, at least I had. When I was first reading these, I was like, no man, they should just make Quinlan Vos the whole way. And I think maybe 99.9% of Star Wars fans were saying the same thing. And so they took us on this other story, the battle, the aftermath, everything, and we were just so engrossed in it, I totally forgot about Quinlan Vos. So when he comes back, I'm like, oh, okay, that's right, he's still undercover. And it's a great issue to read. Not one of the best, maybe, for Quinlan Vos, but definitely interesting, and just advances his storyline. Now, John Ostrander isn't done jumping there. You got to go to Star Wars Republic 64. And in this one, Jedi Ronhar Kim learns a valuable lesson not to be friends with Emperor Palpatine. I mean, Senator, Counselor, Sidious. Yeah, it's one of those stories. Now, to be honest, when I first read it, I didn't mind this story. The whole, hey, I'm friends with Palpatine. Hey, why are bad things happening to me? Because I'm getting too close to a secret, or I'm studying the Sith and I happen to tell him I'm on to something big. This is one of those stories. I know they told these stories a lot. I liked it. I thought they overused the story, but remember, this is back when, and I can't remember, I think we'd only seen this story maybe once in Darth Maul's book. We may have seen it a second time. I just don't remember how these things came out, publish-wise. But this is a story we've seen before where a Jedi gets maybe a little too close to the truth, and then Palpatine has to do something about it. But it's a good story. John Ostrander tells it. It's another breakaway. Like I said, he's just getting snapshots. In a way, now that I'm thinking about it, Republic feels a lot like Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, where it bounces in and out of stories, doesn't stay too long. Even though he could overstay his welcome on seriously any of the stories he was telling. Even the Obi-Wan Anakin stuff is really good. So he could have stayed close to any of these stories and still been successful, in my opinion. But Ostrander decided to bounce from one to the next to the next. Now from there, you need to stop reading Republic and go back to the Jedi comic book one-issue series. This one was for Yoda. It was written by Jeremy Barlow, and it's basically just talking about Yoda and his adventures during the Clone Wars. Not much else more than that, but you got to remember, back then, back in the day, it was hard to get anything Yoda approved by George, even comic books. Sure, he could be featured in comic books with a rest of the cast, but you couldn't have a comic book featuring him. That was a big no-no. Now George made an exception for this book, and he let it go. Why? You're saying, why not have a Yoda solo book, either comic or novel? And I'll talk about the novel later on, which was even a bigger deal. But the comic book was a big deal too, because George didn't want them going into Yoda's past. And that's kind of what you have to do, or what you want to do, when a comic book is centered around one specific Jedi, right? And how do you have a comic book about Yoda without going into what he's like or in his past? Well, I think Jeremy Barlow, who I've talked about before, he's written some Star Wars Tales stories. And I think this was his first big comic book that he did. In my opinion, I think it's the first one that I read. And in it, he doesn't go into Yoda's past much. He does get into Yoda's character and basically just talk about how he's dealing with the Clone Wars. Now, you see, the thing with George is he didn't want that story told in the expanded universe because he always figured that one day he would tell the story of Yoda's origin. We don't even know what his species was. Well, I mean, in the old canon, I don't know if we do now, was his species called Sheev? It is kind of funny when you think about when everyone says, oh, George didn't care about the EU. The EU was never considered canon. Really? Then why didn't George let the EU talk about Yoda's past? if it's not considered canon, they could say whatever they wanted to, right? No, they couldn't, because George told them not to, because he knew it was C canon. It was all in one big continuity with his story, the 6 films. All right, folks, that's all the time I have for today. I got to go throw a brick through that store. See you later.